Business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 9, printed in the congressional record, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Burgess of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Before the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted, a sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
Congressman Burgess of Texas has an amendment which would cut $100 million for domestic uranium enrichment technology development from the Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation Account. Another 2-minute amendment vote. And again, the House is working its way toward final passage of the fiscal year 2013 Energy and Water Spending Bill. Also coming up, votes on motions to instruct the conferees on the Highway Bill, Transportation Bill, a couple of those votes. And we expect the House to move on after this series of votes with debate on amendments to the 2013 Homeland Security Bill.
Are 168 and the nays are 249. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Reed of New York.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Tom Reed of New York, Republican, has an amendment which would increase the funding for the non-defense environmental cleanup programs by $36 million. Well, follow up to the elections yesterday, the 5 primary elections yesterday. Governor Romney won primaries in New Jersey, South Dakota, New Mexico, and Montana, and California. He's now up to 1,398 delegates, according to the Associated Press. And last night in Wisconsin, incumbent Governor Scott Walker winning the recall election 53% to 46%. It's also won him something else. The Hill reporting that he has earned a slot, a primetime speaking slot at the National Convention in August. Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus said today, quote, he's got a pretty good advocate here at the RNC. Josh Lederman of The Hill writes that Priebus, who was born in Wisconsin and formerly ran the state GOP there, called Walker a close friend and suggested he would be exactly the kind of person the party seeks to highlight at the Republican National Convention in Tampa, Florida. That from The Hill. And you can also see the speeches from last night from Governor Walker and from Tom Barrett on our website in the video library at cspan.org.
195, and the amendment is adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Loretta Sanchez, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Loretta Sanchez of California.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
It's the 7th of 15 amendment votes to the Energy and Water Spending Bill for fiscal year 2013. The Loretta Sanchez amendment would reduce the Department of Energy's administration account by $16 million and increase that by that amount, the Defense Nuclear Non-Proliferation account.
The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Polis of Colorado.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Jared Polis's amendment would reduce funding provided for the nuclear weapons activities and programs by $298 million and transfer the funds to the bill's spending reduction account. Another 2-minute vote. This is the Energy and Water Spending Bill for fiscal year 2013. Earlier today, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi wrote a letter to Speaker Boehner asking him to cancel next week's scheduled House recess, the district work period, this afternoon. The Speaker has tweeted that he and the Republican leader, Eric Cantor, have sent a letter to the President urging him to drop his Las Vegas campaign rally and, quote, work together on student loan solution.
unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Lujan, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Lujan of New Mexico.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
The underlying legislation is the $32 billion Energy Department and Water Projects Bill for fiscal year 2013. The House is voting on 15 amendments to that bill. Congressman Lujan's amendment would increase funds for the Defense Environmental Cleanup by $22 million and reduce funds in the same amount for the National Nuclear Security Administration.
And the nays are 244, and the amendment is not adopted. The committee will be in order. Committee will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise and request to speak out of order.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'd advise the House that at the end of the amendment series is the Lummis Amendment. After that amendment, we'll be revoting the Connolly Amendment, so don't leave. We will need to be revoting the gentleman from Virginia's amendment. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that roll call number 327 be vacated to the end that the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, remain as unfinished business, and further, that the Chair may reduce the time for any electronic vote on that amendment to not less than 2 minutes.
Is there objection? Without objection, it is so ordered. The Chair appreciates the motion and will state that the Chair didn't recognize individuals in the well. 2-minute voting will proceed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on amendments on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. An amendment by Mr. Shabbat of Ohio, amendment by Ms. Blackburn of Tennessee, amendment by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina, amendment by Mr. Flake of Arizona, amendment by Mr. King of Iowa, amendment by Mrs. Lummis of Wyoming, amendment by Mr. Connolly of Virginia. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the time for all remaining electronic votes. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Shabbat of Ohio.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
So you just heard the amendment by Jerry Connolly of Virginia will get a revote, and that will be the last vote, last amendment vote in this series. This is an amendment by Steve Shabbat of Ohio. His amendment would eliminate funding provided for the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Delta Regional Authority, the Denali Commission, the Northern Border Regional Commission, and the Southeastern Crescent Regional Commission. 2-minute vote. And the nays are 276, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Mrs. Blackburn, on which the further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Second amendment offered by Mrs. Blackburn of Tennessee.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. It's a 2-minute vote.
The House is on its third and likely last day of working on the 2013 spending bill for energy and water. Last week they passed the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs spending bill. Earlier today they voted. They had general debate on the Homeland Security spending bill. It's likely they'll take up amendments to that legislation this evening as well. The New York Times writing today about the overall plan in the House in terms of spending. Jonathan Weissman writes that the House's spending bill still must be reconciled with Senate measures that will be considerably more administration-friendly. He writes that at the root of the shearing, the cutting, is the House's decision to cut domestic spending overall by $19 billion below the levels set last summer in the deal to end the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling imbroglio. The Senate Democrats, he writes, and Republicans have pledged to abide by those caps, and Mr. Obama has threatened to veto any bill that cuts spending to the lower House level. This is an amendment by Marsha Blackburn which would cut the spending across the board, a 1% cut to all accounts included in the bill.
Unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Mick Mulvaney of South Carolina with an amendment that would cut every account in the bill by 24% except for about a dozen different accounts and agencies.
Are 293, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
First amendment offered by Mr. Flake of Arizona.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Jeff Flake of Arizona with an amendment that would make cuts which would return the underlying bill, the energy and water spending bill, to the fiscal year 2012 levels with a $275 million increase to security spending.
Mr. Conyers votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 144 and the nays are 274, and the amendment is not adopted. Unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. King, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. King of Iowa.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
Another amendment to the 2013 spending bill for the Energy Department and for water projects. Steve King's amendment would prohibit use of the funds to be used to implement, administer, or enforce the wage requirements in the Davis-Bacon Act. Just a couple more amendment votes after this, and the House will move on to motion to instruct, the Democratic motion to instruct, and final passage of the spending bill. The yeas are 184 and the nays are 235, and the amendment is not adopted. Unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wyoming, Mrs. Lummis, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mrs. Lummis of Wyoming.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Well, originally this was going to be the last amendment vote, but the House is going to re-vote on the Jerry Connolly amendment because of some confusion at the end of that vote. That'll be next. This is an amendment by Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, which would prohibit use of funds in the energy and water spending bill to be used to plan or undertake sales or any other transfers of natural or low-enriched uranium from the Department of Energy.
214 and the nays are 302, and the amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, on which further proceedings were postponed and in which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
This is the last amendment vote to the 2013 spending bill for energy and water. After this, motion to instruct, motion to recommit, Democratic motion to recommit and final passage, and a couple of votes on motions to instruct conferees on the highway bill. Later on, we expect the House to take up amendment debate for the 2013 spending bill for Homeland Security.
The 207, the amendment is adopted. With one present. Clerk will read.
This act may be cited as the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2013.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Gentleman will suspend. Mr. Chairman. Committee will be in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee do now rise and report the bill back to the House with sundry amendments and with a recommendation that the amendments be agreed to and that the bill be amended do pass.
Question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole House under the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 5325, directs me to report the same back to the House with sundry amendments with the recommendation that the amendments be agreed to and that the bill as amended do pass.
The Chairman of the Committee of the Whole House in the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 5325 and reports the bill back to the House with sundry amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole, with the recommendation that the amendments be adopted and that the bill as amended do pass. Under House Resolution 667, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the Chair will put them in gross. The question is on the adoption of the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill making appropriations for energy and water development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
Mr. Speaker.
The House will come to order. For what purposes the gentleman from Iowa rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Boswell of Iowa moves to recommit the bill H.R. 5325 to the Committee on Appropriations with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Page 6, line 18, after the dollar amount, insert increase by $31,600,000. Page 7, line 4, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $31 million.
The reading.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to say at the onset that this, again, is perhaps considered the final amendment to the bill. It will not kill the bill. We'll pass it and send it back to the committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage. It will not go back to committee.
The gentleman is correct. The gentleman from Iowa will suspend. Chair would ask members to please take their seats, remove conversations from the aisles. Gentleman from Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, it will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. What this amendment will do is provide $31 million in increased resources for disaster flood protection, as well as $1 million in targeted resources towards non-military energy cooperation assistance with our closest ally in the Middle East and one of the closest allies across the globe that we have, Israel. I've noticed, and I've said it before, and I think I'll say it again, for more than a year I've waited patiently for the majority to stop the slash and burn legislation and revitalize the nation and empower employers to create jobs. Well, we're still waiting on those millionaire job creators to show us the jobs. We're still waiting for the majority to pass an actual jobs bill. But while we sit here and wait, Mother Nature does not. In fact, Mother Nature waits for no one. Mother Nature did not wait for the majority to pass a bill to send massive amounts of snow and rain to parts of Montana, triggering the Missouri River flood of 2011, leaving homes, businesses, farms, towns devastated. Mother Nature did not wait for the majority to pass the jobs bill to send Hurricane Irene barreling across the eastern seaboard, causing billions of dollars in damage. The additional $31 million in funding that my amendment provides for funds, planning, training, and other measures that ensure the readiness of the Corps of Engineers to respond to floods, hurricanes, and other natural disasters, and to support emergency operations in response to such disasters, including but not limited to advanced measures, flood fighting, and emergency operations. These additional resources may not seem significant to some people, but to the family farm that is saved because of adequate farm protection relief, or to the small business that is saved, or to the family home that's saved, or the community that is saved, these additional resources are not only significant, but they can mean the difference between living a dream or living in desolation. But these additional resources of flood protection are not only but one reason why you should support this amendment. Another reason that you should support this amendment is that in supporting this amendment, you vote to support greater cooperation efforts on energy efficiency and renewable energy with Israel. Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East, without question, and one of our strongest allies across the globe. And as such, our ability to work together to advance the interests of both our nations is crucial. One area where I believe we can work even closer together is the realm of energy efficiency and renewable energy. Coming from my state of Iowa, I know a little bit about renewable energy. Iowa is a national leader in the production of wind power, biodiesel, ethanol, and we take great pride in our ability to advance technologies that lead to cleaner, more sustainable energy production. However, in order to reduce our reliance on foreign oil, we must take all of the above approach to energy, including greater domestic production of fossil fuels and, yes, renewable, clean, green sources of energy with greater cooperation with our ally, Israel. We can advance the energy security needs of both our nations, which are vital to greater economic prosperity and growth for years to come. So therefore, I urge, Mr. Speaker, all my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, let me reassure my colleague that I share a concern for fixing the infrastructure that was damaged in last year's flood events. In fact, we provided through our committee $1.7 billion in additional funding to the Corps of Engineers last year for that very purpose. The bill before us now already funds the flood control and coastal emergencies account at the President's request of $30 million. In addition, the motion would increase funding for the U.S.-Israeli Cooperative Agreement to 50% above last year's level. This is completely unwarranted. This is a completely unwarranted increase, considering our bill already maintains funding for this very important program at last year's level, even while we've cut so many programs in our bill to stay within the budget. Mr. Chairman, we put together a strong bipartisan bill which supports a comprehensive energy policy. It maintains a strong national defense, and it maintains the fact that we keep America competitive and keep America open for business. And in that regard, Mr. Chairman, in case there is any question, if members care about the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund projects, this bill is your best option. It is $158 million above the President's request and more than $120 million above the Senate. If you want higher funding levels for these important projects, you must vote for our bill. Mr. Speaker, again, our bill is a commitment to national security, reduced spending, and keeping America open for business. I urge members to vote against the motion to recommit and vote for final passage of the bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, requesting a recorded vote.
Gentleman from Iowa. Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on final passage of the bill and motions to instruct conferees on H.R. 4348 offered by Mr. Flake and Mr. Doggett. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The House wrapping up work on the 2013 spending bill, fiscal year 2013, for the Energy Department and for federal water projects. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, a motion which would ensure readiness and response, including advanced measures, the provision of potable water, etc., for floods, hurricanes, and other natural disasters by increasing funds for the Corps of Engineers Flood Control and Coast Emergencies account by $31,600,000. It's a 15-minute vote. It's the last chance to change the bill before final passage. That's coming next. A couple of votes after that on motions to instruct conferees in the highway bill. And then we expect the House to resume debate on the spending bill for Homeland Security, taking up a number of amendments. During this vote, we're going to bring you part of the news conference this morning. The news conference from this morning from House Speaker John Boehner and other Republican leaders, including Mitch McConnell. They talked about the Bush tax cuts, the Bush-era tax cuts, and more during this 10-minute news conference.
That's what I told him just a few minutes ago. Just calm down, relax. Morning, everyone. You know, last week's jobs report was certainly bad news for the American people, and once again shows that the President's economic policies have failed. As a result, it's really important that we provide some certainty to job creators in our country, and extending all of the current tax rates for at least a year is really important if we're going to help job creators gain a little more confidence and put Americans back to work. Even Bill Clinton came out for it before he was against it. And then, you know, Larry Summers, the President's former economic advisor, this morning came out in favor of this. We believe it's time to extend all of the current tax rates because it really will provide certainty for American job creators. Senator McConnell.
Thank you, John. Let me just add, I was in the middle of the negotiation in December of 10 with the Vice President over extending the current tax rates for 2 years. The argument the President made in agreeing to do that 2 years ago was that the economy needed it. The growth rate now is actually slower than it was in December of 10. as the Speaker indicated, coupling that with Bill Clinton's remarks and then Larry Summers' remarks, it's pretty obvious that the economy needs the certainty of the extension of the current tax rates for at least a year. That would also give us the time to begin to grapple with something we all agree we need to do on a bipartisan basis, which is to reform the whole tax code. That hadn't been done in a quarter of a century, and I think Republicans and Democrats agree that we need to do that once again.
Good morning. You know, as the leader and speaker just said, I think even folks on the other side of the aisle and part of the president's team, if you will, are now actually coming to the realization we got to do everything we can to start growing this economy. It is about economic growth and job creation. That's what the small businesses are telling us. That is what working families are telling us. It's time to focus on job creation. The biggest impediment to that is the small businesses of America feeling that it's very difficult right now to predict where they should move, how they should allocate their capital because of the unknown in the tax rates. And that's why all of us are saying, let's say it to the American people once and for all. We're not going to allow tax rates to go up on anybody. We're going to go and pursue tax reform, as the leader just said, because all sides agree we've got to do something to make our code simpler and fairer.
One of the bills on the floor this week is the repeal of the medical device tax. And this was one of 18 new taxes that was included in the health care bill. I'm really excited that this legislation is coming forward because when you look at the medical device industry, it has been one of the most dynamic industries in America. It's really an American success story that over the last 40 and 50 years, these medical device companies have been coming up with life-saving equipment, great technologies. A few months ago, I held a forum with CEOs from the medical device industry. We called it Jobs and Innovation. And one CEO summed it up this way. He said, if you wanted to kill an industry, you're doing everything right. You know, that is the wrong message that we should be sending to our job creators. We want this kind of innovation in America. We want these kind of jobs. This is a dynamic industry. The tax would be devastating on it. And we're going to be moving forward this week with repealing this medical device tax and keeping these jobs in America. Another takeaway from the roundtable was that it takes 4 years longer on average to get anything approved in America versus what is required in Europe. Again, the regulations and the tax burden are making it harder on our job creators. Let's change that and head in a direction that will keep America competitive.
It's not often in Washington that you get a bipartisan view. But if you listen to former President Clinton, you listen to Summers, you listen to our Speaker, and you listen to our leader, which I would like to say happy birthday to Mr. Cantor. But they're saying the same thing as the small businesses are across America. Being a former small business owner, you know the number one thing you look at is certainty. The certainty of the idea of a tax code system of what you're going to do for next year. The other bipartisan view we have across America is our job growth stinks. We need to create jobs. Do you realize there's more cash on hand in America than there has been in the last 50 years? But the number one reason you cannot make that investment is the uncertainty. The uncertainty to the tax code and the uncertainty to the health care law. Well, you know what? Both of those could be changed this month. That's why we're asking for the extension so jobs can be created in America and America can get back to work.
Well, on Friday, the American people received even more bad news with the unemployment report. The real news is that 3.5 years into his administration, the president's policies, regrettably, are still failing the American people. It's all about the threat of serial trillion-dollar deficits. It's about the fact that this administration has put more regulations on the book than in any time in America's history. Part of it is the rhetoric that vilifies success, attacks the free enterprise system, and part of it is the threat of the single largest tax increase in America's history, much of which will fall upon small business. Now, obviously, President Bill Clinton gets it. He knows in this economy you should not be raising taxes on anybody. And so it will be a good week that House Republicans moved to repeal at least one portion of the president's tax increase, the medical device tax, which doesn't just impact big businesses. I have a small tool and die manufacturer in Jacksonville, Texas, employs 35 people. I went to visit his little plant, and he told me, if this law is enacted, I'm probably going to lay off half of my workers. That's a lot of people in Jacksonville, Texas. It's time to get this economy moving again. It's time to take away the specter of the single largest tax increase in America's history.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to ask you what the Walker win means for Republicans this fall.
Well, I think Wisconsin's election shows that when you listen to the people of your jurisdiction, or in the case of Governor Walker, when you listen to the people of Wisconsin and you follow their will, they're going to stand behind you. They've taken some bold action in Wisconsin, and the Wisconsinites clearly support it.
Do you think that is, I know the legislative agenda here, what you've done in terms of cutting, but I mean, you know what he's done. Do you think that that is the type of thing that you guys should be pursuing here? And is there more of a mandate to do this now because of the election?
The American people have had it with big government and high taxes and a regulatory system that knows no bounds. And they want elected officials to take control of the situation so that American job creators could go back to doing what they do best, creating jobs. Thanks.
Republican leaders from earlier today. The House is now voting on the Democratic motion to recommit on the 2013 spending bill for the Energy Department and water projects. It's a last chance to change the bill before final passage. That vote will be next. And in just a bit, we expect the House to resume debate on the 2013 spending bill for Homeland Security. They had general debate earlier and unlimited amendments set to begin this evening. A preview from a Capitol Hill reporter. With the House debating the 2013 spending bill for Homeland Security, we're joined by Tim Starks of Congressional Quarterly up on Capitol Hill. Tim Starks, what are some of the key issues that lawmakers will debate?
Well, there's substantial agreement on a fair amount of the actual funding levels in the bill. In the past, there's been a fight where Republicans are trying to cut funding for state and local grants, and Democrats want to increase them. The Democrats still want more than is in there now, but they're a lot closer than they have been in past years. So that leaves a couple issues that are points of disagreement. One, there's a Republican amendment that was added to the bill in committee that restricted funding for the Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement to spend any money on any abortion services. The Democrats would like to see that language removed. It's unclear whether there will actually be a removal of that language, though, because Democrats got some things modifying that language that they liked during the committee discussion. So there may not be enough energy or momentum to try and take that language out. There are other things that you actually might see Republicans, for instance, pushing for more border security funding. The bill does decrease slightly that Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau, so you might see some border state lawmakers try to increase that those funding levels. And then Democrats are also upset about some requirements in the bill that say they have to have a certain number of detention beds at ICE. They would like to see that language removed because they say that it doesn't really fit the need of what's out there.
You mentioned the issue of abortion. What other policy writer issues might we see in the debate?
Well, this bill has often been a vehicle for some of the language about Guantanamo. So that's one thing that you might see. You know, the language is often saying that you cannot transfer anyone to U.S. soil with any of the funds in this bill. That's in there again this year, like it has been in past years. But I don't know if there will be an effort to strip it. Democrats traditionally not liked it, but sometimes have not had the votes to get it.
Looking more broadly at the bill, compare it to the spending level from last year, and what agencies and programs does it specifically cover? It is
a very, very small decrease, at least in terms of how many other departments are facing big decreases. I think it's something like 1.2% decrease from last year. The departments, the components of the department that suffer the most are some of the management type accounts, and in particular the Transportation and Security Administration. The administration had wanted Congress to increase the security fee that airline passengers pay because expenses have gone up enormously, and that fee has not been increased for something in like a decade. So the administration wanted that. The Republicans said, no way, we're not going to do it. In fact, we don't even like you proposing it, and we're going to reduce TSA funding as a result of that. Then some other agencies that are affected. Coast Guard is a big component of this Department of Homeland Security, and the administration have proposed some cutbacks that were very unpopular with members of Congress. This bill scales back those cutbacks. It does still cut the funding a little bit. It's still about $10 billion. So that gives you a sense of how big the Coast Guard is within the Department of Homeland Security budget, because we're talking about approximately a $40 billion bill just in terms of discretionary funding that lawmakers can move around, and then another $5.5 billion in disaster relief that doesn't count against those spending caps. So you know, there's an awful lot covered by the Department of Homeland Security overall spending bill, but there are a couple big components that are affected in particular.
Where's the Senate with their version of the Homeland Security bill?
That's also somewhat more similar than they have been in the past. This bill in the House is about $39.1 billion. The one in the Senate is $39.5 billion. So that's not as big a difference as they've had in some past years. And some of the issues that have been big points of dispute between the House and Senate, House being Republican-controlled, Senate being Democratic-controlled, have been some of those first responder, local, state and local grants. But because the Republicans this year said, okay, we've cut these funds enough in past years, we're not going to institute those kind of cuts this year. The Democrats in the Senate are much closer to the Republicans in the House right now than they have been.
Covering the Homeland Security debate in the House, Tim Starks of Congressional Quarterly. Read more at CQ.com. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
And look for amendment debate coming up on that Homeland Security spending bill. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, the last chance to change the bill before final passage. The underlying bill is the spending bill for Energy and Water 2013.